And all of a sudden, the artistry of music that comes forth from a place in which there's probably nothing else like it in the world, the church. The family. You know what I started realizing this last couple of years, and I've been devoting almost all my time to it? As I started realizing that there really isn't any good music coming out of church for kids. And even worse than that, there's nothing for the family. If you want to get a worship album for your kids, half the time it's like we take a bunch of adult songs and make them sound dumb. And then that's what we give to our kids. And the fact that we even separate children from adults, man, it's unbelievable how my son gets it. He's 8. He just turned 8. He gets it. We go out and sit on rocks and talk about stuff like he's been asking me questions at 8. He wants to understand the Trinity. That's the type of questions he's asking. And he just turned 8. And you know what's interesting? I'm scared to answer them. You know what I mean? Because these are complex things that I don't want to just say something. I'll just believe it. Let's walk through it together. Samuel even gets that. He gets that it's okay not to know the answer. Like it's okay for me, I'm learning just to say to Samuel when he says, how can a dad be the son all at the same time? He says that to me. And it's okay for me to say, that's tough, isn't it, Samuel? That's a tough one. So, they get it. Their kids are deep. Has anybody ever read Oswald Chambers? I love Oswald Chambers. You know, when I studied his life in seminary, I learned this, that he only wrote one book. He wrote Sermon on the Mount, to my knowledge. Unless there's some little one out there that's come out recently that I didn't know about that was a secret book that he wrote. But almost everything that's been written by Oswald Chambers was written by his wife. It was written down. She'd sit in the front row and write every word that he spoke down. And then they took all those writings and they compiled them into what we have today. And you know who he was preaching to? Youth. For the most part, he preached to young people. In the early 1900s. In 1930, there was a man by the name of Eberhard Arnold. If you've ever read The Revolution book by Michael Brown, Michael Brown will tell you, I'm not saying this on his behalf, he told me this to my face because I was reading Eberhard Arnold at the same time and picked up some things that he had said in his book, and I said, hey, that sounds a lot like Eberhard Arnold. He said, it is Eberhard Arnold. The whole book is almost Eberhard Arnold. Look at it. It's all quotes of Eberhard Arnold. He's the inspiration. There's a book that if you're young or old in here, you need to read it. It's called God's Revolution, Eberhard Arnold. Unbelievable book. He preached that all to young people, to youth. Another book called Salt and Light, back in the 30s. Intense stuff to youth. Stuff that today in our church we'd probably, like Oswald Chambers in 1900, in 1904, that time frame, 1897 time frame, they were preaching that stuff to youth. And now if you give Oswald Chambers My Utmost for His Highest to your average Christian today in America that's in their 50s, they'd say, well, that's a little bit too deep for me. I don't get it. It isn't relevant to me, so it's not worth anything to me. Because we've created a standard, even in the church, where we've become bound, not free. We've become bound to the creative system of capitalism. You know what that is? Your creativity is beautiful and wonderful. Your message is beautiful and wonderful if you get approval from man. But God doesn't create for human approval. So God doesn't create and then say, whoa, they really liked that one. Well, that's okay. Well, I'm going to make another one of those because everybody clapped for me. God creates with something I like to call, me and Al term this unconditional creativity. He creates with unconditional love. And what does that mean? That means that He could care less whether you get it. He says it's good. What if we brought that back into the church again? Like, what if we brought the Michelangelo kind of idea? Like, do you think he made all the Sistine Chapel? You think he painted all those paintings with a pencil? And then he had all the, the cardinals and the Pope. They were all down there. And he's up there in the scaffolding, and he's doing it with a pencil and a big eraser. And then he looks back down. Hey, how'd you guys like that? Did you like that? Is that okay for you? No, I don't like it. Okay, then let's erase the whole thing. And you know what? The truth is, you don't care either if you weren't bound by capitalism. That's what happened in the 1900s and the 30s. It's like preachers were poor anyway. They didn't care whether you liked them. And it's interesting that that's the way children are. And that's the way we should be. God creates unconditional creativity. Most children, when my son says something, and I'll show you tonight, when my son says something creative, I have to have my pen and paper ready to write it down, or I will miss it, because he most likely will not say it again. It's almost like absurd for him to say it again. Say that again, that was unbelievable. Say it for my friends. Right? Parents, am I telling the truth? Most of the time, say that for my friends, especially when they're under the age of 6. And they haven't been locked into our system of everybody applauding you makes you feel cool. When they're just a kid, and they're not bound by that, they don't want to say it again. They just say things. And it's up to us to catch it. Right? So this depth that we used to have, it comes out of that way in which God creates. And Lord, I pray that we can become a creative people again, not based on our musical genius or our skill, but by bringing our worship to our creativity. That we really want to learn to trust you again with our lives in such a way that we bring everything to you. We bring our dreams to you. We bring everything to you because we really care first and foremost what you think. We care about what you think. And we don't just believe, right, guys? We have faith. It's different than belief. We behold. We don't just believe. We see it with our eyes. And when we see the Father with our eyes, the eyes of our heart, when we see the Father with the eyes of the heart, and we hear the approval of the Father's voice over our lives, then we know that everything else is taken care of. Then we know that we're never alone. And then all of a sudden, purity becomes the hallmark of our life. Creativity flows. It doesn't really matter what people think. The reason that impurity has become the hallmark of the church today is because we care about what men think. So we just